Good morning, everybody. Yes, this is a Sinful Sunday broadcast being done today on Monday. It's October. Everybody knows how the Brotherhood is during the October Grand High Sabbath month. Quite busy, particularly me. Okay. Um, but there's so much going on, right? But today's good conversation is in my Master Counsel little book of sinful deeds and things I like to be talking about. I always write them up ahead of time and kind of gives me some observation of what to think about. So let me use my gavel here for a second. Okay, when I knock, I'm also bringing in the spirits, but that's another story, right? You've heard of spirit rapping, of course. Okay, so today, Drew's got something different. Okay, we got Samhain coming up right around the corner. So, what do I want to talk about today? I'm going to talk about hex signs. Now, everyone has had the experience, I'm sure, of driving down a highway when you're out traveling and you're in a rural area and you're in the countryside and you see many, many barns. Now, you're going to see this a lot more up north, up in the colonial states like Pennsylvania, for instance. I'll get into that later. Um, but you're going to see big barns. Generally, they're painted red, and I'm going to get into that later too. And you'll see an illustration in the symbology that's called a hex sign that's actually been painted on either the side of the barn or at the top point underneath the triangle part of the eaves where the roof comes down like it forms a triangle. Actually, you'll see it up here, right? Okay, and some illustrations of these different hex signs. I got some notes for everybody too, which is good for talking about a subject like this, right? So So here's a illustration of a hex sign, okay, to give you guys an idea of what Drew's talking about here. Sure you all know, but what a hex sign is. But here's a good illustration of one of the hex signs, right? So you have a better idea of what I'm talking about here. Um, and hex signs are going to look differently because they're different signs, of course. Here's some more of them. Okay. Correct. And you can see what I was saying about earlier, where they would be found, right, on the barn. Or a lot of times they're on the side of the barn, so don't get me wrong on that, okay? They're going to be, could be placed in two different places. Now, the ones here on my little notes, right, they're different ones, right? There's one for abundance, okay? This one right here is for abundance. So what Drew is trying to get across now, and they're for everything: love, abundance, protection, bringing rain, helping the crops grow, the whole thing, the whole 9 yards, right? And what do we as satanic witches acknowledge? Well, we acknowledge that we can use symbols like Baphomet above Drew's head. And symbology often reflects another meaning, right? Well, it's the same thing with hex signs, right? And hex signs, like I said, it can be used for many, many different things. And the symbology will reflect what particular purpose we may be using that hex sign for. Because no, they don't just have to be placed upon a barn, which is traditional, yes. But they can be in your kitchen, they can be in your house, they can be painted on your front door. Things people don't generally know about hex signs. Because they are used for so many specific purposes, like abundance and love and those kind of good things too, right? Um, You can be use them in ritual just like you use other symbology as a satanic witch. Absolutely. Again, do your research like Drew does, right? Do your research and investigate all kinds of different hex signs. You'll find them on there under images on a good search on the internet. Okay. And you'll see different ones for different purposes. Again, this is the key. This is what Drew's telling you. The purposes is what matters, right? What you're using them for, what's the purpose for these signs? And believe me, back in the day, the craft of the wise was an integral part of the agricultural cycles of humanity. Okay? That's why magic and witchcraft has always been a part of the agricultural, before we were hunters and gatherers, we also, you know, did a lot of agricultural things. Sometimes we didn't have the weapons yet to be able to kill animals, to be able to eat animals, correct? So we were eating from the earth what the earth provided to us. Exactly. And so we were eating those kind of things. And then later, of course, so agriculture, it was so fucking important, right? Particularly to a village that has decided to become a village because you had many, many tribes back in the day, many tribes, right? And then they came together. Okay. So let me get back to what I was saying about with hex signs. This is so important. Now, I've got some pretty good notes I'm going to read you. Yes, this was written by me too, so this is good stuff. But, you like to be a good teacher, so you're going to want to, be able to show things what I call teacher's aids, right? Right, teacher's aids to people so that you can kind of get it across to people, especially teaching on video, the different things you're trying to teach, right? So again, remember, hex sign is going to go back to what all satanic witches, particularly the Brotherhood satanic witches, would be another form of symbology, hex signs. Okay, just like the demonic sigils are to us. Those can be used in numerous ways as well. So what I'm teaching about the hex signs actually could be used with demonic sigils as well, right? If you know your demons, know what sigils to use for prosperity, we want to use Mammon sigils. So, good example, right? Okay. So let's go through my hex signs brief history real fast, okay? To the Brotherhood, hex signs are an assorted group of round magical signs and symbols. They first started being used by the Pennsylvania Dutch, primarily for protection against, guess what? There we go, witchcraft. So guess what? It was a form of witchcraft because it was used as preventative against dark magic that you didn't want, blighting your crops, making your farm not produce, the earth barren, not enough rain. There could be numerous reasons, right? Famine, because of not enough grains being raised to even feed your cattle and your cows and those kinds of things. All that was important back in the day. Oh boy. And yes, magic was an intricate part of everyday life. To Drew, it's still a part of everyday life. Okay. Let me get back on track here, okay? Because I often will talk about a lot of things. So I have a lot of knowledge internally as well. I don't always need these notes, right? Okay. Okay. So they were used principally for protection against witchcraft and also for attraction, and using witchcraft in a more positive, meaningful manner, also to attract to you and protect you, your family, your hearth, your home, right? Okay. Your farm, your means of attracting food and prosperity to you. Okay. So the signs serve both as amulets and talismans. Wow. Traditionally, hex signs are painted on barns, stables, houses for protection against lightning, to ensure fertility, protect animal and human occupants alike from becoming fur hexed or bewitched. There you go. So now you're seeing there's an integral connection between witchcraft and farming. Wow. And Drew's always been saying this to everybody, but I'm going to say it again, right? Here I am saying it again. But, okay. Hex signs can also be painted on candles, household goods, kitchen utensils and racks, on wooden chests, discs, and these discs don't have to be wooden, they can be metal discs, and hung in windows even, or in a primary place in your home to have this hex sign, particular symbology in that one room even, right? Wow. Various hex signs have a distinct meaning. Some of the symbols date back to the Bronze Age, such as the solar wheel, which is a symbol of the code of the sun, and that went back all the way to ancient Crete and Mycenae. Okay. Most common designs and symbols of a hex sign are enclosed in a circle with stars, which with 5, 6, or 8 points, which are Trudenfuss or pentagrams, and they're variations of different things like hearts, eternal circles, and so on and so forth. The six-petaled heart or star, a fertility hex sign, can be also painted on utensils and tools related to the livestock, especially horses, put on linen, on weavers' tools, mangling boards, and other items. Interesting stuff. Pomegranates are also used for fertility, as most people that are satanic witches know. It's a goddess fruit. It belongs to the dark goddess. If Lilith brings you a pomegranate, you're a very special, blessed soul. I can tell you that much. Okay. Oak leaves for male fertility. Eagle or rooster for a heart, with a heart for strength and courage. Hearts, tulips for love, faith, and happy marriages, right? Other hex signs are designed for healing, accumulation of material goods, and money. There you go. Drew's telling you. So why would this be wanted to be knowledge that satanic witches could use? Because we like to attract and manifest. Am I wrong or right? Okay. Okay. Other hex signs are designed for healing. There you go. An accumulation of material goods, money, starting and stopping rain, and other innumerable purposes. In other words, hex signs could be used for lots of different things. Absolutely. Other hex signs are designed and to be used as charms. Okay. So the hex sign is made into a charm. You would use an incantation, which is said during the making of your hex sign. Okay. When you're making the hex sign, there's very little information concerning hex lines because to many, it was taboo for the Pennsylvania Dutch to talk about the hex signs to outsiders. See, hex signs and their usage at one time was a very secretive thing. It was not shared with the outsiders. You might be driving down the highway, as we said at the beginning of my video, and see the hex sign on the side of the barn, but you're going, wow, that's a beautiful piece of art. Wow, that's kind of neat. It's got all kinds of, petals to it. It's an 8-pointed Luciferian, what looks to be a Luciferian star on it, and so on and so forth. But you don't know what it means. Yes, you do. You're a satanic witch. You're going to know what it means, right? Okay. And you'll have a better sense of what it means once your vibration's up here instead of down here. Okay. Try to live on that vibration with the vibration being up here, guys. You'd be surprised what it attracts to you. Okay. Custom of using hex signs is derived from the old world, brought from Germany and Switzerland by German immigrants who settled in Pennsylvania. That's why you always hear the words Pennsylvania Dutch, right? Okay. During the 17 and 1800s, in the old Saxon religions, it was customary to paint protective symbols on your barn and even your houses. So it goes back to the Saxon traditions. Wow. And yes, it could protect you as well as bring an attraction to you, depending on how you use your hex signs, right? Okay. In Germany, tradition calls hex signs to be placed in the frames of barns, but not necessarily in the house. Where Switzerland, it was customarily to place a sign on a house. So there are some varying differences in the usage of a hex sign between Switzerland and Germany, of course. But here in America, it's entirely up to us. There you go. Signs proliferated in Pennsylvania Dutch area throughout the 19th century, okay? And that's when the popularity of these things started coming into being, and many people started sharing them. But during the 20th century, a belief in magical art started declining. So a lot of these things then went back into what Drew calls the secret mode, right? Sometimes also called a form of the underground stream, when things were left more secret than today. Okay. The other thing I think I would add about the use of hex signs and things like this and symbology to a Brotherhood Satanist or to a satanic witch, whether you're solitary or in an organization, is how important it could be in your spell work and in your ritual work, right? Everything's a symbol, like I said. There it is again, right? Okay. But everything's a symbol. So you want to start learning the different symbologies of these hex signs. And again, Use them in your home to protect you and to bring manifestations and to attract things to you. They will also repel, can be used as a ward. The symbology itself can be used as a ward to protect your home as well. Yes, there are hex signs that will protect you. Why do you think they became called hex signs? It wasn't because we were going to hex somebody else. It was because the farm folk knew the importance of protecting themselves from the spirits that are around constantly. Okay, they were well aware of the spirit world and our world, just taking a jump from one into the other. Particularly different times of the year, like Walpurgis and Samhain. A lot of mischievous spirits out and about. So you didn't want to attract them to your farm, right? And to blight your crops or to, kill your cattle or things like that. You didn't want these mischievous spirits, doing mischief on your farm, right? So many hex signs were used for what Drew likes to use the words called banish misfortune. Banish misfortune. It's not just an Irish term. It's not just an old folk term, everybody. It's a term that's been around witchcraft for many, many centuries. Many, many centuries. Because as a satanic witch, you always want to be protected, number one. And you have to know the things and usages that are best um, uh, utilized for those protective measures, warding off a hex, warding off a negative energy that's been actually directed towards you by another witch that doesn't like you, per se, right? It's not just to keep the mysterious spirits at bay. It's to keep everything at bay. Everything. So that it doesn't set a foot, an inch on your own property as a farmer that's also a what? A witch. Exactly. You'll find in farming and those kinds of things that many of our customs and traditions are still alive. Now, before we moved into Glen Ellen, which was when I was in seventh grade, we lived in a little town called Lombard right next door. We had over a 475-acre farm. I got raised, growing corn and those things. Yes, my father was still a federal lawyer for the government, but he wanted us two boys to have a connection with the land and to learn these kind of things. And he knew the only way that we were going to learn these things and retain them when we got older, like today, Drew's almost 70 today, was to teach us in a manner to where we were as connected to the earth as possible and to start learning these things from a young age up. So even in generational Satanism, yes, these hex signs were utilized by our families. Absolutely, they were. No, you didn't have to be German or Swiss. Absolutely not. You see a lot of the usages of the hex signs presented by, say, the Pennsylvania Dutch and even the Amish, and even some Quakers used it back in the day. I think in Pennsylvania area, if I'm right, Quakertown, Pennsylvania area, which, interesting enough, was also the place where the first Rosicrucian order in colonial America was founded. Quakertown. Interesting, huh? Pennsylvania. Fraternitatis Rosicrucis under our Swedenborg climate, I believe, was the first outer head of the order, imperator of that order. Okay. So why would Drew be talking about hex signs? Okay, with Samhain coming up, and like I said earlier, it's a mischievous time of year. The veil is so thin right now, right? I can just consciously connect to the other side that fast right now, this time of year. I always tell people it's my most strongest time of year for Drew because Samhain's Drew's second birthday. Yes, I was ordained a high priest. A high priest. I was only 13 years old. So I call it my second birthday. And to me, once I became a high priest, bam. Yes, I was in the Brotherhood life before that as a child, for sure. But when I when I was consecrated a high priest, guess what? And it was at the very oldest site in the whole county. My grandmother's farm stood on the banks of the DuPage River. This is in Illinois. And right behind her farm, there's a big stone standing. And it's the stone commemorating that this was the place that the first log cabin in the entire county stood. The first log cabin, right off the back of my grandmother's property, her farm, which was down the road, some miles from our farm, our first, before we did move into Glen Ellen later. All these things about my history are, they're history today, particularly to me as a personal Satanist, right? Individually, it's individual history, true. So, but what I'm getting at here is even my grandmother and even my dad wanted to make sure that they had these hex signs on their barns. Of course, they were a Brotherhood family. We were a Brotherhood Satanic generational family. Yes, with a lot of Irish background, in fact. But yes, so we followed those traditions. My dad was a stickler on history. He was a historian too, a lot like Drew is today. My father was a far surpassed me. Old rune, they were very old. Those from the rune stones, that's how old my father's line went back, right? Okay, but that's another story. Okay, so both of our farms in my past history growing up, my grandmother's and also our farm, our first place of residence as I grew up, we did have these Pennsylvania Dutch hex signs on our barns. And if I'm remembering properly, my mother even had one in our kitchen. Okay. And again, these were to attract abundance and also to protect. And if I'm correct, my father and my grandmother both utilized both kinds of hex signs. They had the protective hex signs and the manifestation hex signs. And the banishing hex signs to protect you from any kind of ill magic being sent towards you that could possibly, affect your own, in our case, growing corn. Could affect your crop from producing a major crop that year, right? So the hex signs were utilized by my family. They absolutely were. And I'm telling you, we raised some corn. That corn was 10 foot high, everybody. More than that sometimes. 10 to 12 foot high corn. When you watch the movie Children of the Corn, and you see the big four ways out in the middle of nowhere, and each corner is a cornfield, right? 10 foot high cornfield. And in the middle of the crossroads, is the PowerPoint, right? Okay. As children, that's where we went out and partied as kids. We had a big crossroads that we partied at in the middle of 4 huge cornfields. Okay. Yes, the county cops even let us party out there and do rituals and the whole thing, As long as we cleaned up our mess and put the bonfire out. That's the main thing they wanted us to do, right? But let's get back to what I'm talking about, talking about a little bit of country witchery here, a little bit too, as Drew was growing up, right? Dark Druid to be clear. Okay. So my grandmother and my father did use, and my grandparents did use hex signs. Oh, very definitely. They knew so much it was unreal. I'm so glad I'm being able to remember some of these things as I'm getting close to 70 years old. And I'm being able to share these experiences and things with my Brotherhood family and my friends and supporters out there, okay? That's why I'm out here. I'm a way shower. I like to teach things. Okay. But it's always going to be real information. I want you to go out and check what Drew says to you on your own. Drew knows what he's talking about, but I want you to do that. You know why? Because I also encourage you to be an individual Satanist and an individual Satanic Witch. Learn these crafty things that Drew is teaching and start utilizing them yourself, because that's really what I would like to see you do, right? I'm a good teacher. I don't care if I only have one student. I'm going to teach you something. Okay. Excuse Vinny, our puppy downstairs barking at something. I don't know what that might be, but that happens sometimes. People can walk down the road and he's, going to let us know somebody's outside. But back to the Pennsylvania Dutch hex signs. And again, no, this is just not common only in Pennsylvania. You can see these hex signs all over when you're driving in farmland today. It's very, very important that, you kind of have your eyes open, right? Remember me telling you that as individual Satanists, it's always going to be those signs they'll jump out at you personally. That's because they're for you personally, right? Okay. Well, one of those things it was when Drew was growing up as a young child, and of course my family having the hex signs as well, and traveling and going on vacation and stuff with the family, we'd be out there in the countryside driving along the road and we'd see these symbols all over the place, right? Depending on where we were going, especially when we were on the East Coast. Again, like I said. But you want to be a knowledgeable Satanist too. And all these things are relevant, right? Because all this extra knowledge, you might say, well, why as a Satanist would I even give a shit about hex signs? To enhance your knowledge. To also make your practice work, right? Because the more you know, the more actual things that you can put into your spell work and your ritual magic. Drew says it all the time. But I'm not lying to anybody. It's absolutely the truth. We're surrounded by symbology. Hex signs are symbology, my friends. Okay. But they're more than that. They can be used much like a witch's pentacle is used today. You could actually even have a small hex sign on your altar, depending on what the magic is you're working. Okay. Pretty cool stuff, actually. So thanks for your time today, guys, because I'm not trying to keep everybody today, but I've got some new things to be talking about. And, of course, Samhain's approaching soon. Our grand high Sabbath, Drew's second birthday. Hail Satan. And I'm going to be close to my ancestors. They're right here over my shoulder anyway. But, I'll be close to my ancestors, especially at Samhain, because we get to open the door for them. Now, to be truthful, our coven opens the door to our ancestors every month. We absolutely do. We invite them. They're in our rituals with us. Yes. So another thing I probably would add, besides the discussion about, how important your study of hex signs could become to you as an individual Satanist wanting self-empowerment, which means no more knowledge and gnosis, right? Being transmitted to you. Well, gnosis can be transmitted from so many different ways, everybody. Yes, it's transmitted through our five senses. I said my last video, I was going to talk about those senses, didn't I? That's where it's transmitted to us, through our five senses. One of them is visual. But it's more than seeing what you're looking at. It's knowing what it means. What does it really reflect? Okay. Same thing with Pennsylvania Dutch hex signs, or any hex signs you use, whether they're Swiss, German, Dutch, or whatever, right? So there's one other little comment I wanted to make. I have it here in my notes. I've got to figure out which word it exactly is, but it's okay. So basically, like I said, I want to go back to one thing so you have an idea that there's different things, right? Now, the hex signs, their origins are different cultures, of course, like normal, right? Well, what are we? We're a melting pot. We're a cauldron, a seething cauldron of many, many nationalities and ethnic backgrounds. That's America. Here's to the American witch, right? Okay. So we have German hex signs, Dutch hex signs, traditional hex signs, and Amish hex signs. Now, traditional, let me go back to what I'm saying about this. The word traditional is what covers all these extra things Drew's talking about, right? Traditional hex signs. They can be used in any tradition, by any tradition, for any traditional means or usage. exactly what Drew's been telling me. All right. Thanks, everybody, for your time. I'm glad to be here. I can feel sound coming closer. Wow, coming closer. There's so much going on. As an individual Satanist, remember what Drew tells you all the time. Your personal growth depends on one thing: how much you want to grow. You also determine the speed of growth. How fast do you want to go from point A to point B? Do you want to be at point A and just, okay, you're going like this? Or do you want to go in a straight linear line back like it's supposed to be, right? From A to B with your knowledge. That's what you want to do. It's not here to go. It's a current. Remember what Drew tells you. Current, a vibration, a frequency. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Background music, thanks to The River, our local Atlanta classic rock station. You can expect to be seeing some Brotherhood advertisement going on The River soon for the Atlanta area. Drew's working on it. We're those that know and those that do. One of the important things of being somebody that knows and does is to be the right kind of teacher, right? So you want to have the right kinds of satanic teachers and leadership that are going to lead you to gnosis, of all kinds of gnosis, right? All kinds of directions. The main key is that you utilize them in your everyday life. Accentuate them into your lifestyle. The craft is more than, there's a saying in witchcraft, the craft is more than just a hobby. The craft is a way of life. And the craft does not belong, no terms, the craft. It does not belong to Wicca. Never belonged to Wicca. It goes back pre-Gardner. Way back. And yes, it has many Masonic connections. Even before a Grand Lodge of Masons was founded the first time in Scotland, and then later in England, and then, of course, transported here to America. Before that, we've always been the craft. It's our craft. Again, think about what crafts people do. They start as an apprentice, yes. Then they become a fellow craft because they're in their journey. They're becoming to assess knowledge, and they're becoming who they really are, right? And then they become the master mason after that. Where you go through that symbolic theme of the mysteries I often talk about, especially this time of year. Where you can be like Drew, where Drew was raised out of that open coffin as a master mason. It was over 200-year-old coffin from the East Coast. Again, where a lot of these things about hex signs and that kind of stuff, right? Where the origins and histories in America, where those things started, was our East Coast. Oh, yes. My background in Satanism and witchcraft and magic and the dark druids doesn't just, encompass the Midwest or me being down here over 30 years. It's from all over the United States with a lot of European background. I have a lot of European background. I'm a second, not a fourth, a second generation from Europe in my bloodline. So, when you hear the Brotherhood say that a lot, got bloodline, we even have it on one of our new t-shirts that High Priest Belder, created. To people like Drew and the generational Brotherhood, that has a lot of meaning, got bloodline, okay? But here's the key to that got bloodline. We all got bloodline. All right. Okay. The reason the Brotherhood pushes, because we are generational, but the reason we push bloodline, guys, is for you all individually, not as, not the whole, but as an individual, connect with your personal DNA, your personal bloodline, to your ancestors. Then you can take a step out there and honor the Brotherhood ancestors that have both lived and died for their craft. Okay. So Pennsylvania Dutch hex signs, and hex signs in general, like I said, this is what I'm talking about today, is hex signs, can be utilized by the Satanic Witch in their everyday life, just like many, many other usages that benefit us and help us in our manifestations of abundance and protection, and to ward off evil from somebody attacking us. Even there's so many ways to block somebody and to uncross somebody's magic that they try to use against you. I'll tell you how you do that, how you can block anybody from trying to use magic against you. You have the keys of knowledge. Have all this knowledge that you already know that you can use to protect yourself as a Satanist. And you're not just using, and there's where you get them. You're not just using one thing that you know how to protect yourself with. You're using a whole fucking goddamn cauldron full. And that's your knowledge that you're going to gain yourself as you become and keep growing as an individual Satanist. These things are so important, guys. So important to us. Everything's symbology, isn't it? There's a Brotherhood ram. Okay. But everything is it's symbology. There's a reason that we wear a patch. And you see the stars inverted, right? And you see the serpent around it. And besides the horned moons, but you see the serpent, and you see how we wear it. We have the serpent's head faces where? To the left. The left-hand path, always. And the left-hand path is where the serpent imparts knowledge such as Drew's trying to pass on to everybody too. To where you have a well-broadened, well-rounded, as I call it, well-rounded, area of knowledge that you've brought into your own satanic soul. You've introduced it to your own black flame, and then it clicks in your pituitary gland, right, in your third eye. And then you can measure it and use it in all your mannerisms and usages in your everyday life as a saint. Remember what I said. Hex signs can be used for protection and attracting abundance and prosperity. Okay, love, numerous things. All the things an individual would want to use and have, using their magic, and have that knowledge to be used in their magic. That's what self-empowers us. Gaining knowledge and gnosis. Why would you not, why would it be that Drew's constantly saying things like expounding the gnosis, the transmission of our knowledge, is so important to us. We're going to keep those things alive. It's part of my charge, my sacred pledge to you, to keep alive the old ways and wear the old horn. For this was I live, and for this was I born. It's an absolute true statement. Again, start the study of hex signs. You're going to see all kinds of different hex signs. Unfortunately, when I copied these, they came out black and white, and I wanted to show you some really colorful illustrations. I really did. They came out black and white. But you're going to have an idea once you start doing a little research on your own. You're going to see the different colors. Yeah, and even the colors were magical. They selected the colors of these hex signs and the illustrations on the hex signs for specific reasons too. Now, if you know color magic, something I probably talk about is 101 to Drew. But if you know color magic, you'll understand why they select different colors on these different hex signs too. You can't see them here. These didn't copy colored for some fucking crazy reason, but okay. But there's a reason for that. Even color magic is involved with the hex signs. Oh, absolutely. Okay, my friends. Again, I didn't want to keep everybody too long today. And Samhain's coming up. I really, really hope you're going to have a great Rocktober, the rest of October, okay? Um, in the Atlanta area, listen to 97.1 The River, our classic rock and roll station. They are Brotherhood of Satan supporters. Live long and prosper, everybody. And I'll be talking again next weekend. We've got all kinds of neat stuff coming up as we get closer to Samhain. Hail Satan, and don't forget to hail Satan first, and then hail yourself. This is how real theistic Satanists believe. And we will live our craft and craft our life. Hail Satan.